I'm indeed in my last year. I'm graduating soon from University College London. My degree is in cancer biomedicine, which is a biomedical sciences degree, but kind of tailored around cancer research, focused on cancer research. And my goal is to, my ultimate goal is to help develop new therapeutics for diseases that have an unmet need for interventions right now. Be it cancer or the multitude of other diseases that need more clinical attention. So I'll be doing a master's in research after this in biomedical sciences at Imperial College London. And yeah, that's me.
Thanks. Yeah, so that's great. So very often students who are interested in not just undergrad programs, but also grad school in biomedical sciences are not familiar with what a day in the life of a senior or a graduating student in this field would look like. And what are the details of things that you actually study or spend time doing at research labs and other sort of meetings? So yeah, why don't you give us a rundown on how it is like to be a BMS student?
Sure. So I would say most third years will probably be in the same position as me, where we are working a lot. Honestly, it is a lot of work, but I would say for like the stress of doing well is alleviated a bit, because you kind of have, if you're going into grad school, then you kind of have an offer, and they don't usually set super high conditions at stage. So if you're like me and you kind of know in your second year that you want to do grad school, then you'll probably work really hard in second year, because those are kind of the grades you apply with. So what I'm doing right now mainly is working on my dissertation, which is a big research project that I guess most people do in their third years in all courses. But in the science course, it's so we got options of about like 20 odd research questions, and some of them were sorry, my plumbing is really loud, so if you hear some weird squealing in the back, that's what it is. So we got choices of research projects based on data analysis or laboratory work or a mix of both. And I thought, what with like COVID and stuff, you never know what's going to happen. So I wanted to go for one that was a mix of both, so that in case anything happened and we couldn't go to the labs, I would still have stuff to do outside of the lab. And also second year is when I realized that I'm interested in other diseases and not just cancer, right? So I was looking for questions that might allow me to explore things outside of only cancer. And so I ended up doing a question which basically so it is kind of cancer based. So melanoma is a type of skin cancer, right? And there's a lot we don't know about it yet. It's quite it's quite a hard one to manage clinically. So obviously researchers are always trying to uncover more about the pathways that kind of lead to oncogenesis, which is the start of cancer and the progression of cancer. So what my question is that it studies one type of cell called a keratinocyte, which is an epidermal cell. So it's, in this context, it lies in the epidermis of the skin. And it kind of focuses on, so there's another cell called a Langerhans cell, which is, we researchers know that Langerhans cells have something to do with melanoma progression, but it's not clear what exactly happens. So one research group at UCL is working on figuring out they have reason to believe that keratinocytes have something to do with the interaction between Langerhans cells and melanoma cells. So they've taken me on as part of that project to figure out what keratinocytes do in that interaction. So they have a bunch of stuff on Langerhans cells and melanoma, but they don't have that much on where keratinocytes stand in the middle as the intermediary, right? So what I'm doing is figuring out if keratinocytes are expressing some kind of inflammatory cytokines, which are just like molecules, I guess, pro-inflammatory molecules. Because technically the Langerhans cells are supposed to stay in the skin and, make sure the cancer doesn't progress out of it. But something is happening to make the Langerhans cells move out of the skin, which they shouldn't be doing. And my research group thinks that the keratinocytes have something to do with that. So I need to figure out whether the keratinocytes are maybe producing things that are making the Langerhans cells go out of the skin when they shouldn't be, if that makes sense. So what I'm doing is, one half of it is literally me in the lab testing different, literally just coming up with genes that I think might be, cytokines that I think might be relevant, and testing to see if the keratinocytes express those. So if they do, that means, okay, they probably are playing a role in making the Langerhans cells move out. And if they don't, then I just try and figure out other things that might be happening. It's a very trial and error type process.
So this is really fascinating. And it seems that there's a ton of data out there which you're trying to sort of correlate or sort of even produce. So how does that work as a researcher? What exactly do you need to know as your toolkit? What skills or knowledge do you acquire through coursework to be able to do this work?
It's a really good question, actually, and it's very pertinent. So like I said, one half of the project for me is lab work, but the other half is, it's more theoretical. So I'm building a network. And when I say network, I mean, it's like a diagram of the interactions between those three components of the melanoma cells, Langerhans cells, and the keratinocytes. So I'm literally just drawing pathways that I think might be linked and stuff. Anyways, the point is that to do that, I had to go through loads and loads and loads of research papers that already exist and sift through information that I thought might be relevant, and then transfer that to my model and kind of, if that makes sense. So one really important skill in research is knowing how to pick important research papers, the ones that have been peer reviewed, the ones that have been cited by many other institutions, because that means that they have quite a lot of weightage in the research world. So our courseworks prior to this have taught us a lot of kind of literature reviewing and going to the literature and picking what's important and what's not. That's a key skill. And also being able to skim read research papers that are like 20 pages long. It sounds daunting, but actually if you learn to kind of just hone in on what's important, it's not that bad. That's another thing that you'll inevitably learn that in a research degree. Then obviously there's a lot of data analysis tools. You need to know like actual, sometimes it's programming, other times it's just being proficient in like Microsoft Excel and things that'll just make your life easier if you're trying to process a lot of data. That's really key. And now in my dissertation, we're using a lot of cool software like Prism, which is pretty advanced software that helps kind of not really analyze data, but kind of lay it out in a way that makes sense. So as you go through your research degree, most people will come across really cool kinds of software that make life, it seems daunting, but it actually makes life a lot easier if you're trying to like process and analyze data. And it goes above and beyond anything you will have learned in school. Another thing I would say, sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah, that's it. Go ahead.
Another thing I would say is a key skill as well is being able to convey scientific information in a way that's understandable to kind of a multitude of audiences, because no scientist is going to have to ever only talk to like other scientists. You're going to have to relay that information to other parties, other kinds of people. And it's important to know how to break it down so that people who are maybe scientifically literate but not experts in cancer research will be able to understand you. So we're taught that throughout our degree as well.
Fascinating. I think the idea of like gleaning through documents of research, finding what you're really looking for, using the tools, and then presenting it, learning data visualization techniques, all of this is fascinating.
Exactly.
So if you were to look at the next thing that you would focus on, say rare diseases, and are there any specific areas or rare diseases that you think sort of you'd be interested in continuation of the work that you've done with cancer research?
So one, I guess there are a couple of diseases. So diseases like cystic fibrosis.
COVID is obviously not a rare disease anymore.
It is not. And honestly, I'm done with COVID. Like I'm not going to be studying it. That's one thing I know for sure. But there's there was one assignment we were asked to do in
Yeah.
year two, which was to come up with a cure for a disease that doesn't really have any short like treatments. And so I picked cystic fibrosis, which is a pretty complex disease of the like mucus lining, and it's really quite complicated. But it was such a difficult assignment. It was so hard, but it was so fulfilling. Not that I like cure the disease whatsoever, but just going through the process of trying to just like theorize about possible areas you could target that other researchers haven't been able to do yet for whatever reason. um, that's what really fascinates me. So I think that I'm gonna probably move away from cancer altogether and go into like a disease like that. But the thing is that research from other rare diseases can also be relevant to cancer, because sometimes the same pathways are involved, the same cells are involved. Like what I'm doing in my dissertation, Langerhans cells, keratinocytes, the interactions will be relevant to other maybe like inflammatory diseases or whatever. So it's not like the results will only determine the fate of cancer, if they even do, but it can always be relevant to other diseases. So my hope is that if I go into diseases that I'm more interested in right now, that could maybe lend to like disease in a broader context and not just limited to what I'm researching, if that makes sense.
Fascinating. There's always this question with students who are looking at being medical practitioners, doctors, and or pursuing research like you are. I know you were at that crossroad 4 years ago, or perhaps when you were thinking of undergrad. Uh, do you still find it fulfilling that you're kind of there helping alleviating human suffering through research and possibly breakthroughs in ways technology can be used or research can be used? At the same time, is there a connection with the medical community, doctors at large who are frontline, say, sort of workers, meeting people and connecting with patients or something? How do you see that happen?
Well, yes, it's for me, it's extremely fulfilling. Like even just knowing, even though I'm only in my undergraduate degree and it's not like I'm saving lives or anything, but knowing that that's what I'm working towards is is a huge thing for me. It's one of the main things that got me into, when I wanted to do medicine initially, was one of the main things that got me into the whole stream. It's this idea of combining my, I guess, love for science with for me, it's really important to be in a career that's actually fulfilling to me as a person. And I know a lot of people say this, but it really is true. Like I need to, if I don't wake up every day and feel like I'm doing something that is of societal value, I don't know how I would motivate myself. It's a huge thing for me. And some people just live their lives and do what makes them happy, and that's amazing for them as well. But I know I'm just not the kind of person who could, I think, go through life like that. So it's very, very fulfilling. I know that even if I'm never part of a team that makes an amazing breakthrough, like just trying is enough for me. It really is. In terms of our interactions with, I guess, the medical community, so the thing that actually kind of steered me away from applied medicine to medical research was the realization that in medical practice, you're on the front line to having that interaction with patients, and it's an incredibly noble and fulfilling career for sure. But for me, like what I get that fulfillment out of is kind of delving into the theory and uncovering things and novel insights at a theoretical level. And it's not quite like that with applied medicine. So that's kind of what steered me away from that into this world. But there's a lot of
Thanks for that.
interactions. Yeah.
Thanks, because I think there are students I work with who are also thinking of this, and it just helps to have this conversation out there for them
Yeah.
to listen in and even have questions for you
Yeah,
later
sure,
on.
of course.
In fact, this is the month in March that we run our Women in Tech, Women in Sciences, Women in Leadership, with Women in Business sort of panel discussions. Love to invite you for some of those. So
I
look
would
forward to
love
seeing
that.
you.
That'd
Great.
be amazing. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you so much. Thank you for
Thank you.
having me.
Bye.
Bye.